In this video, I will finally introduce the Black-Scholes formula. The Black-Scholes formula is the formula to calculate the price or the premium of a call option. And obviously, this is under the assumption that I gave you above. And I want to remind you that there are actually more assumption in the Black-Scholes model than what I said. I just tried to leave it to the most important assumption. Okay, so the notation that I use here, you'll never find the Black-Scholes model online under or equation under this kind of form, and the reason here is that I actually wrote it being consistent with what we use in option earlier. So for example, this S here, that's the underlying price right now, currently. Okay, and the reason I did that is to make it easier for you to follow from the previous material to this material here. The second thing I want to say before going further here is that I'm not going to explain the intuitive reasoning behind the Black-Scholes formula right now. I will try to do that after we did a couple of examples. So I'm just going to explain the formula. I'm going to do examples, and then we'll come back and we'll think about what does it do intuitively, right? Okay, so that's the underlying price, that's S. These N here, these N's are the standard normal cumulative distribution. So we're evaluating the normal distribution at D1, we're evaluating the normal distribution at D2. This T here, that is the time to maturity for our option. How long will it take until our option mature? This X is the strike price, and this R here is the risk-free rate. So this equation itself, I don't think is that scary or overwhelming. It is a little bit difficult to calculate ND1 with just a standard normal distribution table, right, which you probably have done in stats if you've taken stat courses. That's a little bit annoying to do. ND2 will be the same, a little bit annoying, but the rest of this is pretty straightforward. In an exam, I will not usually ask you to calculate this whole thing, right? I'll probably just either give you ND1 and ND2 and ask you to calculate this, or I'll ask you to calculate D1, or I'll ask you to calculate D2. I might also ask you what would you put in Excel as an input in order to calculate ND1 or ND2. So those are the kind of questions I can ask here. So I can kind of foresee like three different type of questions, right? And also questions understanding the logic of this formula. What is annoying with the Black-Scholes formula is not this part here. It's how to calculate D1 and D2. Those are pretty messy to calculate. So I have the equation for D1 here, and I'll talk a little bit more about D1 in not too long, but I won't go in complete details about it, because if you don't know how to use limits and things like that, we can't really do a ton of detail about D1. But this is D1, and while it is a little bit of a big formula, you've worked with big formulas before. It's just putting the numbers correctly in here, and you should see that most of the numbers are the same variable we had here, right? S and X and T and R. So these numbers show up here. There's one new number that shows up, and it's this sigma S here. That is the standard deviation of the log return of the underlying. So whatever that underlying is, that is its standard deviation. Okay, and then D2 is pretty straightforward, I think. Once you've calculated D1, it's a little bit easier to do, but you do need to calculate D1 first, and then you can simply calculate D2 with this equation here. Okay, I think I'll stop the video here so I can just have a video where I discuss the equation. In the next videos, I will be doing example of how to use this formula.